wind rattled the battered signs above Reims Hill Holiday Park, a faded cluster of caravans tucked away on the outskirts of Blackpool. Beyond the gravel paths and empty picnic benches, two men worked quickly inside a locked caravan, unseen by the few families still lingering on the grounds. Terence Earle pressed down hard on a roll of duct tape, sealing the last of several heavy boxes stacked neatly against the wall. Across the cramped living space, Stephen Earle heaved a blue chemical drum into position, wiping the sweat from his brow as he glanced anxiously through the curtains. On a flimsy plastic table, an old Nokia burner phone buzzed twice and fell silent. Written on a scrap of paper beside it were just a few words. Transit van, Motherwell, 7 boxes. Terence spoke, without looking up. "Tonight's the night," he said. Stephen nodded, pulling the blinds tighter. In a place built for seaside memories and caravan holidays, a secret drug empire was taking root. Terence and Stephen Earle were not the type of criminals who flaunted their wealth or chased headlines. They were careful, patient, and quietly ambitious. Based out of Merseyside, the cousins plotted to build something bigger than street-level drug dealing. By the end of 2020, their growing organization would stretch from Liverpool to Scotland, trafficking heroin, cocaine, and the chemicals needed to produce industrial quantities of amphetamines. Their front was perfect. The holiday park, just outside Blackpool, looked like any other run-down coastal getaway. Families, static caravans, an aging reception office. But behind the closed doors of one warehouse, the Earls stockpiled hundreds of kilos of alpha-phenylase toacetamide, a critical precursor for producing amphetamine on a massive scale. Their ambition was not to smuggle finished drugs, but to manufacture them here in Britain, hidden in plain sight. Operating under EncroChat codenames Thickbore and Octohand, the Earls ordered shipments of chemicals from Europe, organized deliveries through trusted couriers, and coordinated payments in cash, all from within the safety of their smartphones. They weren't just moving drugs, they were building a production empire designed to operate silently, invisibly, and at industrial scale. But no matter how clever the plan, or how quiet the operation, every empire leaves a footprint. And for the Earls, the first cracks in their carefully built facade were already starting to appear. Tucked away on the edge of Blackpool, the holiday park looked like nothing more than a tired relic of British seaside resorts. Rows of static caravans sat behind rusted gates. Weeds pushed through the cracked tarmac. It was the perfect place for something to go unnoticed. Behind a set of locked doors on the site, Terence and Stephen Earle were constructing the next phase of their enterprise. Their plan was as ambitious as it was simple. Manufacture almost 1,000 kilograms of PHET locally and avoid the risks of importing the product from overseas. Once processed, the drugs would flood the streets from Merseyside to Scotland. With an estimated street value of more than £1.1 million. Trusted couriers had been lined up. New supply routes had been mapped out. The Earls believed they were one step closer to controlling a major slice of Britain's drug trade. In the early months of 2020, Terence and Stephen Earle took the next step in building their hidden empire. Their ambitions no longer stopped at Merseyside. They wanted to push north, deeper into Scotland, and to do it, they needed to establish a reliable, low-risk supply line. From their holiday park base, they oversaw the quiet preparation of a Ford Transit van, loaded with 7 boxes of the chemical APAA. Their destination was a garage in Motherwell, North Lanarkshire, nearly 200 miles away. The movement was careful. No markings on the van, no rush. A simple point-to-point run across quiet motorways, designed to avoid attention and avoid mistakes. On the surface, it looked like nothing more than another delivery van making a long journey north. But inside, the boxes carried the raw ingredients for a lucrative trade, one that would pour drugs into Scottish communities for months to come. The transfer marked the first physical expansion of the Earl's network beyond Merseyside. A subtle, quiet move, but one that proved their ambitions stretched far beyond the faded edges of Blackpool's caravan parks. They were laying the foundations for a national supply chain, and somewhere within their network of locations, the cousins had established a covert production unit, a secret Breaking Bad-style drugs lab. A faint chemical haze hung in the air, warm, acidic, and stinging at the throat. Glass tubes bubbled steadily with pale yellow fluid, the low hiss of gas burners breaking the silence. Above it all, a rigged array of cooling fans clattered against rusted brackets, struggling to keep the heat down. Condensation streaked down plastic sheeting stapled to the walls. There were no labels, no warnings, just makeshift workbenches stacked with measuring jugs, powder-streaked scales, and rolls of duct tape. Terence and Stephen Earle were not content with simply trafficking finished drugs. Their ambition was far greater. Somewhere within their network of locations, they had established a secret lab, a facility valued by investigators at over £1 million, capable of producing amphetamine on an industrial scale. Inside the lab, the air would have been thick with the sharp sting of chemical fumes, a byproduct of the volatile reactions needed to manufacture street-level amphetamines. Large blue chemical drums lined the walls, filled with raw precursor substances ready for conversion. Makeshift mixing vessels, repurposed catering vats and industrial-grade containers churned the unstable mixtures under constant supervision. Heating elements buzzed quietly, warming the chemicals to precise temperatures needed to trigger reactions. Improvised ventilation systems, rigged together with extractor fans and plastic ducting, fought a losing battle against the heavy, toxic air. In clandestine operations like this, there were no proper safety measures. No fire suppression systems, no guarantees that one wrong move wouldn't cause an explosion, poisoning, or death. Every surface inside the lab was stained with chemical residue. Workbenches were cluttered with measuring jugs, glass thermometers, industrial gloves, and breathing masks. Sheets of tarpaulin hung from the ceilings to control airflow and conceal equipment from casual view. All that was left now was the delivery. The chemicals were already on the move, packed into boxes, shrink-wrapped, loaded into a lorry like any other consignment. Just another delivery from a caravan park warehouse. But this was no regular shipment. It was the final piece, the ignition key to a £1 million setup. The moment the chemicals arrived, the lab would go live. It wasn't rushed. It was methodical, efficient, and built with the sole purpose of churning out vast quantities of drugs while staying invisible. But the lab, believed to be in Scotland, was halted when Lancashire police seized the shipment. The rain taps against the roof of a battered Vauxhall Astra. Under the faint glow of a pub car park light, two men are stood facing each other. No handshakes and no small talk. One of them pops the boot open. A sports bag changes hands, heavy and zipped tight. Just a nod, no words spoken. Then both men slipped back into their cars and pulled away into the night, heading in different directions. For them, this was routine, and routine kept the wheels turning. Behind every drug empire are the men who move the product, the couriers, the go-betweens, the ones who don't make headlines, but keep the machine alive. The Earls knew this, and they built their gang with people they trusted to stay quiet and deliver on time. Among them was Stanley Fearick, a long-time associate who worked closely with Terence Earle. Fearick used his job as a heavy goods driver to transport high-value loads under the radar, including heroin, chemicals, and cash. He became a key part of the network's daily movements between Merseyside and Scotland. Then there was Stephen King, a smaller player, but still involved. King's role was limited to handling Class B drugs, but his criminal history, 4 previous convictions for 5 offences, meant he was no stranger to organised crime. He operated out of Dumbarton, part of the wider Scottish end of the supply line. But one of the most important cogs in the machine was Lee Baxter, a quiet, well-spoken man with no major criminal background. Baxter had previously worked at Jaguar Land Rover's Halewood plant, and later as a shift manager in a plastics firm. After being made redundant, he was drawn into the gang and agreed to transport cash and drugs on behalf of the Earls. According to court evidence, he once delivered £34,000 in cash to a contact using the Chat handle Slim Zebra. He claimed the job came from a casual chat at a football match and insisted he was paid nothing. But Chat transcripts showed him coordinating logistics, drop-offs, and pickups, acting as the quiet courier behind the money flow. None of them were at the top, but without them, the product wouldn't move and the cash wouldn't flow. By December 2020, the National Crime Agency had seen enough. After months of surveillance and decoded Chat messages, they were ready to act. Lancashire Police moved first, tracking a white lorry leaving Reims Hill Holiday Park. The vehicle had been loaded at a warehouse on the site. It was carrying 3 pallets, stacked with 28 cardboard boxes. Inside, 560 kilograms of APAA, a key ingredient for amphetamine production. This single shipment was enough to manufacture around 1,000 kilograms of street-level amphetamine, with a potential street value of over £1.1 million. The seizure confirmed what investigators already suspected. The Earls were running more than just a supply chain. They were producing industrial quantities of drugs from inside the UK. But this was only part of the collapse. Around the same time, officers intercepted another vehicle, this one driven by Stanley Fearick, heading southbound on the M6. Inside his lorry, hidden in a holdall, they discovered 2.9 kilograms of heroin, estimated to be worth £300,000, along with £20,000 in cash. A later search of Fearick's home on Longreach Road in Dovecot uncovered an additional £10,000 in cash stashed away. Chat messages, fully decrypted by the NCA, tied every part of the network together. From Terence and Stephen Earl, to couriers like Baxter and King, to chemical suppliers like Stephen Singleton, the entire web was laid bare. The raids marked the beginning of the end for the Holiday Park Cartel, and the evidence was only just beginning to speak. By the summer of 2020, pressure was building across the entire network. Chat messages had been cracked, loads were being intercepted, surveillance teams were closing in on every side, and Stephen Earl knew what was coming. In July 2020, he quietly left the country, boarding a flight from Manchester Airport to Portugal. He wasn't waving a white flag, he was trying to stay out of reach. But he'd underestimated just how far the net had spread. It took time, but they found him. Working off intelligence from the UK's National Crime Agency, the Polícia Judiciária fugitive team in Faro located and arrested him. Stephen Earl was extradited back to Britain, where he would later plead guilty to multiple drug supply charges. His time on the run had bought him nothing. The operation he helped build was gone, and soon he would join the rest of them to face sentencing. The operation had crumbled, the drugs were seized, the messages were read, the fugitives were dragged back. And now the sentences were handed down. Terence Earl, the architect, jailed for 16.5 years. Stanley Fearick, his close enforcer, 8.5 years. Stephen Singleton, the supplier behind the chemicals. 41 months, served on top of an existing term. Lee Baxter, the courier, 22 months suspended. Stephen King, low level but involved, 18 months, also suspended. And Stephen Earle, the last to be caught, the last to face court, sentenced to 11 years and 4 months, after pleading guilty to 4 counts of drug supply. There were no more caravans, no more escape plans. The holiday park cartel was finished, and this is how it ends for crews like theirs. You can run kilos in lorries and cash in holdalls. You can stash your chemicals behind locked caravans and trust the weather to hide your movements. You can vanish behind usernames and secret phones, but it never lasts, because the season always ends. And when it does, the gates stay locked. For more raw and real crime stories, hit the like button and subscribe. Until the next episode, stay alert and stay safe.